Okay, this video is going to be about Blender to Unity, like importing from Blender, but what it's going to be is the programmer's perspective of what needs to be done. You'll see me kind of going over things and then explaining why things need to be the way they are. Um, Again, this is from a programmer's perspective of what needs to be done as far as using with rigid body, rotations, and pivoting and so forth, and orientations and moving and stuff like that. But anyways, if I sound a little sick, it's because I am. I've been dealing with something for a while. Let's move on to the important stuff. I would say that this is a must-see because I see whenever I have somebody model something for me or whenever I check their work, I see that there's a lot of information that they don't know about. Especially advanced modelers, they don't know how this stuff is supposed to import into Unity, so it becomes a little bit challenging, especially trying to explain things to them. So we're going to go to how to start right away. So I have a models folder, and everything is pretty straightforward. This is a newer game I'm working on called IT Overclockers, and let's just look at a wall here. So I got a wall here. And you can go over to the model simply by, this has a parent in it, by selecting the mesh. So right here we can see this is where mine is under Windows. It's organized pretty well, I think. So I'm going to do something simpler. Let's just go with a wall. Open this up. I'm going to show you in Blender 2.79, but you can follow along and do this in Blender 2.8. And the reason for that is that I'm using 2.79 is that I still can't get 2.8 to work with blend files for some reason. I guess maybe it's not supported. But anyways, one of the first things that comes to mind is the pivot. So let's show that. Pivot's right here. And the thing about Unity is you cannot really snap very well. I mean, you can, but it's junky. So if I check this wall right here, you can see that the pivot point is down there. And if I move this holding control, we can see that it snaps right to the floor pretty easily because of the units that it works with here. It's going 1, 2, 3, 4 down to 0. And I've basically moved up in Unity, or Blender, excuse me, like this. I push 1 and going up 1. So they correspond. So the pivot, though, is very important. In Unity, you want to see blue, which is the forward facing forward, and the green, which is up, or yellow, or Y, excuse me, and the red off to the side, which is X. If we go and we check these pivots on anything I have, let's see, are we in pivot mode right now? Yeah. We would see that my pivots are in the center. If we check my character, the pivots are mainly, it depends on exactly, but in this aspect right here, the pivot's not in the center of that head, but in most cases, you're going to want to do the pivot in the center of, or near the center of, or at the bottom of. And to explain, this has to do with rigid bodies and rotations and whatnot. There are formulas, or functions, excuse me, like quaternion look rotation, that defaults to the forward, facing forward. So, and you want to think about it, the forward is moving forward. To do this in Blender is pretty simple. Let's start out with a new model, just so I don't mess up with things. And you'll notice here that, I probably should point this out, you got blue going up. It's really kind of green. You have to think about the XYZ here is different than the XYZ in here. You got a left versus right system. So if you go over here, you got blue forward, green up, and here you've got green forward and red to the side and blue up. And I think this is called right, not left. If you were to write these down and kind of remember that, you'd be good, but then you have a problem that you have to be careful in what you're doing. this doesn't have a parent in here. This is a single object. However, if you have something that has multiple objects, it does this where it parents like this, and then you have orientation gets messed up. And so when you bring it in here, you'll notice that some of them are forward and some of them aren't. And I'll show you how to fix that and how to address it. So let's close this. Now let's just make a brand new one. Or actually, let's see here, walls, windows. Let's just copy this. So I'm going to duplicate this. Is that the one I duplicated? Just going to call it testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's open this up. And right away we got what I was talking about is we got two objects here. And if I bring this in, this testing 1, 2, 3, let me make room. Okay, so I bring this in here. And, you know, right away it goes to 0, 0, 0 for me. The pivot is right where I want it to be at the bottom of the floor. So it makes it easy for this case, like I said, locking it down. And the floor is like that too. I'll have a pivot like that. If we look at it, we can see this is a parent of the actual model name. And then you have the two pieces, the two meshes inside. And checking right now, they are the same. But there'll be a case where sometimes they aren't. So you have to be kind of careful with that and watch it. Now, you might say, well, I don't care about where the pivot is. I can make a new game object. I can obviously, let's say if the game object's pivot was messed up, I could create an empty here and put it in here. And I could put this in it, and then I could rotate this. And, well, that's not a very good example. Because you know why you didn't, you need to think about like this. So basically you could put something in there and then rotate it. So there's your example. But the thing is that you're going to game object every single time for every single mesh, and you're going to have hundreds and then thousands, and you should not do this. This is a real big no-no. And what you should do is learn how to address it properly. So the thing to do in this case is put the pivot. And that pivot is really how it not only rotates, but it works with the rigid body, the center of mass. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in programming, how you do the physics and whatnot is basically like positional moving, and that goes for forces and velocity, but for, or accelerations too, for moving like that. If you want to do rotations and torque deals with rotations, and you can see this works off the pivot. So you can see that this would be a very big problem if not addressed properly. So you need to realize where your pivots are, where to put them, and I'll show you how to kind of do the pivot in Blender. The best way is to tab, and for me, select where you want it. So I think about my object first. So here, if I want it in the middle of this, I'll usually just select here, here, I go Shift S, and then I go cursor to selected. Now in 2.8, you can look up how to do cursor to selected and figure that out. But I'm in edit mode, and you can see where my 3D cursor is now. Now I tab out, so I'm in object mode. I go Control Shift Alt C, and then I go origin to 3D cursor. Now that puts it right there where I want it, and it'll be like that in Unity. However, the thing to note is, I was going to say, sorry about that. You're not going to, like if you want it to be somewhere else, you have to realize how to select. So going with select all, for example, and if I do Shift S, I go cursor to selected. Now I'm in the center of the entire thing. So you have to kind of get used to knowing how to make your pivot and where you want it. If you want your pivot, you do edge select right here. Let's say I want this to be a door and I want this to be the pivot, cursor to selected. I want to do it on a face, cursor to selected. I mean, there's many ways of doing it, but you just need to realize you could even do it at a vertex, cursor to selected. So, and you can move this. You can go into your 3D cursor in here and move it somewhere in here. I think it is location right here. So And you can't Control Z that, so don't try to. Or you can just go Shift S, cursor to center, which goes 0, 0, 0. That's where normally it is. Now, you want things to be basically made for you in Unity. Like right now, you can see that it's easy for me to move this wall and match it up to the ground and to these cabinets and whatnot. But in Unity, if you imagine that I don't have these units perfectly, I'd be doing something like this. And even if I'd snap, it wouldn't match up, and I'd have little what I call them gaps and whatnot. And there's a problem with this is that if you're making a level that you don't want things to happen, like collisions to be unavoided, this level design right here, you can see that the colliders are all made. I got the top, I got the bottom, I got all the way around. There's no way to get out of the colliders. Really, the only way to get out is if you have a slow computer and the physics is chugging, then you could possibly get out. But if you try, it's impossible. I'd have to program some higher velocities and whatnot to move. I mean, you can see the character will not be able to get out of this. So my point being is you want to mesh things together, and you use Blender to do that. And the thing about that that's really nice is, let me bring it up in this example here, is that you can put bullets and whatnot straight up in the cannons, turrets, whatever you have. Gatlings, this is Gatlings. Yes, it's a 54 Gatling helicopter. And that is very important. We'll go back in here. Try to follow me. I'm sorry, I'm going a little fast, and there's going to be a lot that I'm talking about, but it's very much useful and necessary information. So let's say the pivot here is wrong. I set that up, but the orientation, is wrong. And let's just go ahead and rotate this on the Y 90 degrees. No, excuse me, Z. Rotate on Z 90. And that's R and then Z and then rotate on 90. And that's with the object. That's not in edit mode. And then I save this. And then I go back into Unity. And the thing about blend files is that it doesn't always update right away. Especially because I took the prefab and completely unpacked it. But in some cases it still doesn't update. So what I do personally is I delete and I bring back. And then I can see it's updated. And that's great with blend files, is that you can do this drag and drop and easily do what you need to. But here now you can see that the orientation is different. And if I wanted to figure out how to fix the orientation, if I wanted the Ford to go this way, all you have to do is look at this and look at this, and you can tell what's wrong. So right now, I need to take this thing and rotate it this direction. You can go to the rotate here, and you can see I need to rotate it that direction. Now, if you match that up into Unity or Blender, you can actually see, okay, rotate Z, go, oops, damn it, rotate Z, and then you start to move it, and you realize, oh, it goes the other direction. So this looks like negative 90. Okay, and then hit save, and that's with the object. So I go back into here, and if I did that right, there we go, Ford blue. And like I said, every once in a while I will delete this because I don't trust Unity to the code with the blend files to operate that correctly, to show update, excuse me. So right there we see, okay, that looks good. And you can do this for anything. If it was rotated in a weird way, like this, 90 degrees down this way, you could fix it still. And after you do the object orientation rotation, that was a weird way to say that, what you could have is that the object now is at a different slant or different angle than you want. So what you can do is you actually go to tab, you go into edit mode, you select everything, and then you rotate again the opposite direction. So that would just be 90. And what this does is this doesn't mess up the rotation at all. Make sure the faces are there. So then when I go look at it, the rotation shouldn't be messed up at all, the object orientation. What is messed up is then just the mesh rotation. So you can see there that the blue arrow is still facing the same way. So, and then we get all zeroed out, which is really kind of cool because you can zero out and have a facing forward. So you can set up your models to work perfectly the way you want. And then in programming code, it's much easier when everything's all zeroed out. You don't have to do adds or subtractions or multiplications, no offsets. And this becomes a lot nicer and easier to work with. So I'll go tab in here, and I could, again, fix this to be, when you do the rotation, this is one thing I need to also state, is you need to look where your pivot is. So you see where my pivot is right now. You need to go down here and select 3D cursor. And this allows you to pivot, I'm pivoting by Z, pivot right where that is. Okay, you have to think about the pivot point, and that's really important too, is that when I go and I fix these, I look at the pivot point first. I make sure it's selected on 3D cursor, whether I'm in object or edit mode, 3D cursor, and then I rotate by that pivot point. If you have to, go to the actual selection, go to cursor to selected, or excuse me, this will actually have to tab first, Shift S, cursor to selected. Because in edit mode, it tries to go to the entire selection, but in object mode, it tries to go to the actual pivot point, so, or where the pivot was. So it's very much necessary to make sure it's in 3D cursor if you're going to do this and get it all fixed up and working. So all my models, especially my character, let's delete this for a second, has blue facing forward. And that's because now when I go to program it and I say move forward, it just forward. And everything works out well. It's all zeroed out. Now, let's move on because I've kind of showed that. You should do testing and figure this out for yourself, how to rotate properly, get it saved into Unity, and get it defaulted. But let's move on to the scale. The scale is really important too. I've got 1, 1, 1 right here, 1. And if I go and I check the actual model, let's see, Windows, testing 1, 2, 3. I can come over here and you can edit some of this stuff, which is really cool. So you can just set the scale mode. But this is for the actual parent of the, if it's one object, it's okay. But when it's got like multiple meshes in and everything, this scale mode doesn't really help you because now that's only doing basically the parent. And, well, you can guess that everything beneath that is not going to be the proper scale. And how you adjust this is I could go in here and I could scale this by say 2. Okay, now I hit save. And if I go show this, so let's go pull this back in here. So we should see the parent looks like it's at 1, 1, 1, but then this is at 2, 2, 2. Okay, and this is the problem that I'm going to explain, is that when you don't have your scale at 1, 1, 1, you have weird rotations and whatnot that show up. So I'm going to move this into here. Let's go on parent completely. And then when you do some weird rotations, like, well, not this right now, it's because let's do something really strange. Like, see right here. The fact is, it takes the scale into account. So when you do these rotations and whatnot, you can get some weird stuff. I'm not doing it right now well enough to show. I think you have to parent a certain other way. I don't remember. The main reason I don't know this well enough is because I always put 1, 1, 1, 1 and I don't deal with shit. I just get it working perfectly. But if I want to parent things, you could see that when I went to parent it, the scale had changed. Instead of being 1, 1, 1 on that window, vector 3, 1, it became a vector 3 half, basically. And this is not good for things that like guns and weapons and whatnot, especially if you parent and unparent multiple times. What happens is Unity makes this a float, and the precision starts to get really messed up. I shouldn't say precision, your precision, because you may have where you want it 1, but then what happens is it starts going 9, 9, 9, 8, and then starts over time
you parent and unparent so many times, it starts to become less and less and less, or more and more and more. So um, a good thing that I like to do is keep it on vector 3.1. If I parent something, I will sometimes check and see, and then vector 3.1 it again. But this isn't always necessary. It's just explaining what happens. And when you put things together, just having a scale of 1 with rotations and everything is just so much better than having to deal with any other issues. So looking at this, I'd be like, well, that's kind of problematic. Obviously, it doesn't look right now. So what I'm going to do is undo this, and you can change the scale um, by going to Control A, and resetting scale, and then hit save. So if I had scaled this up, you can even see the scale right here. It says 111 right now, but if it had a weird number in Unity, it's going to come out like that. But let's say I want this, and I want the scale um, resetted. You can see I just did it right there, Shift A. And now if I bring that into Unity, the scale is always 111. Okay, so that's absolutely important, absolutely necessary. So save this as is right now. And that's the great thing about working with blend files, is that you can quickly drag and drop, check your work. When I'm building a VR game, I absolutely have to use blend files so I can work fast and build what I need to. Um, so there are some other things I can show, but again, this is the programmer's perspective. This isn't really um, perspective with Blender's side. I mean, we have like this material right here, and we can do some extractions and whatnot. But going over here, I'm going to show you an issue that I've seen that I think is absolutely important to talk about, is that you have these faces, and sometimes they're real cut up. So what I mean by that, if you were cutting a mesh or whatnot, you're not normally supposed to do that unless you rebuild the topology and whatnot. But let's say you have a weird shape. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and um, see if I can make a really weird shape here. So let's extrude that, and then this is just okay. So break that down. Now something like this, Unity will try to break this out into triangles and then show it. Let's go save here. And I want to bring this up because it's absolutely important anyways. I might as well. So come over here and I check it. Now, in some cases, even if you built it perfectly, if your topology was good, this obviously is not. There's a fold right here in the center, and it just doesn't make sense. But if your topology was good, and you still have one whole face here, sometimes in Unity, what happens is you go and you check it, and it can't build the triangles correctly. It looks messed up. And even if you had gone in here and UV unwrapped it properly and looked over here, and if it was unwrapped properly, it would still look messed up. And the reason for this is that I'm not exactly sure that Unity understands how to show it properly. So what you'll end up doing is going Control T, which triangulates it, and then you save it and go back into Unity, and you'll see that the mesh with the texture looks fine after you save. So that's something important just to kind of state if you don't understand why the hell does that look like that in Unity. That's what the problem is. Okay, so let's see here. What else to talk about as far as programmer's perspective? And you can see there that that didn't update unless I click into Unity. I did save, right? Yeah, make sure you click into Unity. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so here's another thing I'm going to talk about, which I think is something that really should just be said. So you got a model that has a shitload of guns like this, or something, and it's all mirrored, and it's basically the same turret everywhere. You got one turret here that's the same in 6 places. You got another turret here that's probably the same in about 50 places, no less than 50. So what do you do? Well, this is what I do. I'm going to go to the model, and show you. So in the model, we got tons of what I call empties. And these are basically transforms because I have to have them where the bullets come out of, you know. So their locations and whatnot. And like I was explaining earlier, that you want the perfect, like where the bullet comes out perfectly from your gun or whatnot, you set it up in Blender. So you get the exact, well, I shouldn't say exact, but very good precision. And right here, we go to look and we just see a bunch of these empties. Those are where I can just copy and paste the game object. So what happens, or the mesh of the game object, is that this right here is just copy and pasted in 6 places, and this one is copy and pasted in 48 places, I believe. So, and the same goes for all the bullets. See here, bullets, bullets, and there would be none in there because you just need to copy and paste the gun. So, but these are the positions of shell casings. So these are all shell casings. Shell casings where they would fling out of the gun area, the way this works. So the point being is there's no point in having a shitload of those models. And if you go back into Unity here, and I go and I open this up, I'll go down and the only thing I see is one turret, or pieces to one turret gun, or Gatling. In this case, it's a Gatling. And you should do this for multiple objects that are the same, mirrored or whatnot. Top fan here. Let's see, where is the, well, we got, so we only have one bullet. That's it. You don't see multiple bullets. I don't go in here and I see a whole bunch of big Gatlings and a whole bunch of small Gatlings. And when you go to select the model, you're going to see tons and tons of that. So let me go in here and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Right here, you would see tons and tons of Gatling guns and tons of bullets. And it's just not really necessary. It's just junk, extra junk. So, but anyways, so there's that setup. And this game is really fantastic looking. Well, it's more of a scenario at the moment. Let's go back to the next thing I want to talk about. Kind of go over. Make sure your UVs are, of course, completed. So when you bring the object into Unity, you can see things the way they're supposed to be. From a programmer's perspective, tiling and whatnot is also important. We got a thing over here. I've got tiling on this and a UV correctly and then tiling it, so this actually moves when it's ready. As you can see there, that kind of looks like it's lagging, but that's just the speed that Unity is demonstrating that at. And again, having these things that scale 1 to 1 to 1 is really good, especially rotating and whatnot. So having the correct orientation rotation, having the scale set properly, having it mesh to where it's supposed to, like the walls here, this is really good. This provides a lot less problems for me, especially with doing rigid bodies and doing physics. So you can see here that I address these issues and how I build this together. And this information I think is kind of hard to find and understand a little bit at first if you've never encountered or seen what needs to be done. But it's absolutely necessary. Every time I turn around, I have to go and address a model. And because nobody understands how these things are supposed to be done, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people, a lot of 3D modelers that even I've seen professional ones that give me a model and I look at it and go, what the heck? Do they not know this? Do they not understand? But it makes sense. They don't do any programming. They don't get the C2 of the sides of the aspect. And so in this case, this video is absolutely important to understand that. Is there anything else I could address or say? I don't think so. Off the top of my head, if I have more, I'll attach it onto this video. I'm just kind of looking around to see if there is anything else to go about. I think I went over the important reasons why everything needs to have the pivot in the right spot. Usually in the center if you're going to do physics on it. Otherwise, you don't have to really worry as much. But if I was to have these moving, it's in the center. Most cases you want it in the center. So going and looking at my helicopter here, it's in the center. And, you know, this does not have the forward here on this. And there are ways of fixing that. This is an empty, so I could rotate it, but I like it zeroed out. And in some cases, you could just say transform dot, is that right? Transform dot right. So that's this direction right here. So let's say I want to move forward, transform dot right times a scalar type of vector, so that would move, you know, such and such distance. But again, doing some orientational stuff with like some of the functions. Quaternion dot look rotation. Let's go look at here. Well, let me see here. Where's the camera at? Camera, I think, is parented. Player. Okay, so here's the camera here. What was I gonna show? Damn it. Kind of bear with me. Sorry, I've been really sick. Affects my brain and everything too. Fuck it, I don't remember. But going to maybe the guns, for example. Even the guns might not have a blue here, but normally everything I do does have blue forward. Transforms definitely do. These are all rigid body. Well, I don't use rigid body in this game. I wrote my own physics for this simply because it works a hell of a lot better for what I'm doing. So for here, the bullets moving forward goes off the blue axis forward. But normally you would want that anyways when you're doing the rigid body. Forward things with force or velocity, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. What really sucks is having to go back and forth, going through Unity and your IDE and checking to see, okay, what axis is this on, what axis is that on, and you can program a vector 3 axis in, but it's still a pain in the butt when everything doesn't really match up. You need forward to be forward. So I think over here, I think I started doing that again. And it's really a pain to address it much later in the game. If you decide, okay, I need to change everything now with blue forward. Oh man, what a pain. So it's better off to do it right at the beginning. And looking at, let's see here, this game, I go in and check the character. Everything right away is forward. Oh, absolutely. If you stay with this video, I remembered now what I'm going to show you. I got to open up another project. So this is something that's very cool. Absolutely worth, where is it? Locked in a maze. So a problem like dealing with animations and whatnot, and from a programmer slash Blender perspective a little bit, you can do some really much easier work on yourself. I'm going to do some animation real quick and demonstrate this. Let's say you need mirroring and whatnot, and in Unity, it's really just, I don't know why they haven't really come up with the best way to mirror animation, but this is the best way I have found from my experience. And I didn't really read about this, I kind of just figured this out, so it's probably some other places that describe this and tell you what to do. Sorry, I have HDRP on a lot of my projects, and so this tends to take forever to load for that reason. Let's close that. Yes, I want to quit. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so in this project we've got two hands here. And the one thing here, just, oh, you know what, before we do that, I want to state also that the great thing about using a blend file, I'm going to go over here to my helicopter, for example. So I had some faces that were really close together, and you get what I call like a bleed through. So imagine if I move this a little bit like that, as this rotates, you can actually see the blue right here going through the metal. It's rotating. It's very weird. And going through the blend file, you can actually go in there and slightly move the face a little bit off and whatnot, and you can see and fix that, uh, which is why some things cannot be right up against, and some things do need to be right up against. And you can't really do this in Unity. I mean, you kind of can, but imagine that if you need to work on a low scale for some reason, you need to get in there and actually see something. Actually, in Unity, it's so fucking hard sometimes too. You could use tools and whatnot that you make and some third party, but this does not move as well as it does in Unity, or Blender, excuse me, Shift F. I can go exactly where I want. I can scroll down, scroll up to get a faster, slower speed, or even hold Shift, and I can get right where I need to look at. Some things are very tiny when I'm working in VR, and that really sucks. So I have to do everything really in Blender is the best way I figured that out um, before I, go over to Unity with it. Okay, so here's something really cool, really important. So we've got a model here, and in the model here, this one, we have two hands and the gun. Okay, now let's open this up. I probably won't be able to open it up that way. I forgot these aren't blend files. Basically, what ends up happening is, let's look at the Glock. This is kind of what I was saying earlier, is that if you have the pistol away from like this, the clip away from it, I have to actually manually try to put that up there in Unity. A best way to do this from a programmer's perspective and have it ready is to have it all assembled. It's assembled like this, and then from Blender into Unity bring it in. And then with code you can just remove it, move it out of the way. But you have the exact position, the exact rotation where it's supposed to be. And here we can see that on this clip, it doesn't really matter where the forward is on that. I could rotate that, but I go in and check other things here. Thing with the trigger. I did the same thing with why is there two clip bullets here? I think one is the empty game object, just forgot to delete it. I need to open the prefab and delete it then. Yeah, that was the empty from Blender, and then just pasting the same bullet into position. So there's a bullet here you can't see that's disabled. Let's see the trigger here. So there's the pivot for the trigger. And you can set these up in Blender and go and check in Unity, is the pivot in the right spot? Is it set up where I want? You could even default it so it starts at 0. In this case, I don't think it really matters for me when I'm programming it. I would just say from here to there with move to and rotate towards. So those are absolutely fantastic functions. However, rotate towards does have a little bit of a glitch. Sometimes when it has to rotate backwards at a negative angle and it's really far, I think like 270 for example, it starts to glitch up with rotate towards. So, but you can make your own rotate towards function, which is much better and reliable where it doesn't ever do that. But they're still fantastic functions for, they always go to what they need to. If you say rotate towards or move towards and you say position or rotation, they will absolutely go to those degrees. So you can check them at the same time. In the update, you can say, well, if this is at negative x 120, after you say move to negative x 120, it'll eventually get there. It won't go to 120, 121 or 119. It will actually go to 120 on the dot. So that's really cool. All right, so we'll go and look at this character here, or this person with two hands. And there was really no need to make two hands. You just make one hand, right hand. You got all the bones set up and whatnot. And what you do is you bring it into Unity. There's your one hand right there. You duplicate it, but you got to make sure that everything in here is set up properly. So you got zeros, your armature is outside. You don't want it inside at the top of being the parent. And we got the right hand here. This is the model. So normally what I do is I rename that right hand model. This is right hand. This is someone else's model I'm showing right now. And you just make the right hand. And if you want to put props on the hand, something else you can, put them on now. You can unpack completely, put them on. And you want to check, at least look at the, in this case, I don't think the pivot point really matters because of how I'm using this. But there's the forward there and whatnot. Okay, doesn't really matter because I got the player set up this way. You should always have, when you're doing animation, you should have at least one more parent. Because when you move animations, if you move them in local, they move in local space really, and so you could move a character somewhere and have the recording still work because you have an extra one of these. If you move with animation with this, then you've got a problem. You should be moving with animation with the local that you set up. So local animation is what I do. Then I just move the player to where I want and the animation still works, doing some kind of movement and whatnot. That's very important too, but that's understanding how the animation works. So going back to this hand, which is absolutely important, you take this right hand here and you're going to duplicate it. So I go right hand here, and then for instance you could just call it left hand. And if everything was centered properly in the first place, you got centered here in the 0, then it should mirror over to the other side as soon as you change the X to a -1. Now this doesn't really work for things like parenting a gun with a collider and the scale of the collider becomes negative. Unity doesn't like that. But you could put, you could parent it in the player and have that position and rotation there. And as long as the pivot is set at the 0, you could basically use negative and positive X, which is the same. What I mean there is that the gun would be, you would still put the pivots in the center of the gun and whatnot for doing your rigid body stuff that you want to do. But a parent above that would have a 0, 0, 0 within the player. So, and then you could move the gun like that, and that way and put it in the hand instead of with a negative scale because you'd have a problem. Now look here, and I do have a mirrored hand. And what's really great about this is that the names are the same down below. Everything's the same. And that's great because you can, with basically code even, alter your animations. So I'm going to show you. So I got left and right hand. I'm going to go ahead and delete these because I already have them right here in the player, left and right hand. And you can see really the difference only is X and is -1 and 1 on the other one. They're both pretty much the same. So if I open these up, and we'll go to player, and then we go to animator. Excuse my language on some of this. Is just for, I was just setting up. Obviously, it's this bitch slap, but go to animation here. Okay, hands idle. In the hands idle, if I was to push, let's see, I need to go here, animation, hands idle, push play. This is basically, I did one animation, duplicated it, and just moved it in here, copy pasted. It was super fast. So I made one animation and that was it. And it just plays through. Looks okay, decent, I guess. Let's go left hand. And then if we go check it on right hand, I know that doesn't look right, but there we go. That looks a lot better from this angle. Basically what happens is that I made the animation once. So I only did right hand, for example. So I'll go ahead and I'll go right hand. I'll duplicate it. I'll call this left hand, whatever, for right now. Basically that'd be left hand bitch slap. So in here you would select this, and you would have to go through here and rename all these so that just from right to left hand so that they know what target it means the other hand. And all the rotations and whatnot, because the scale is -1 on the parent of your hand, will be mirrored and basically will work on the opposite side. All you need to do then is rename all of these by hand, but you don't need to do that if you're a programmer. So this right here, this right hand, I'm going to change all those to left hand. So this is left hand, whatever. And I made my own script for this. So I go over here and I say, let's see here. It says right hand, right? So I change right hand to left hand, and I hit replace, and then I go ahead and I close this, and I check it. Sometimes Unity will not update correctly, so you have to like switch between files, go to the animator, or select the player. But when you go and you check it, if everything's done right, you'll notice that it says left hand, and now this animation will work on the opposite side. That's all I had to do. Extremely easy, very pretty, very quick. And so now I just go in here and I would just push play and do what I want. Let's go to player. So I have put both these hands now in this. I only had one and one the other, basically duplicated. And you can select, which is really cool, is you can select all these pretty easily, like something like this, and then, copy paste from one to another. But I basically only did one hand. That's what's the great thing about this, is that good thing is if they're mirrored. If this hand had like less fingers or something, you would still have to do some custom work, some stuff like that. Let's go ahead and push play here. And I'm moving around. This game has slow motion that is affected everywhere except you. So just hold down right click, everything goes in slow motion except you. And it took a special bit of programming. I can turn off right click and turn it on, which is really freaking cool. You can see how smooth it goes into. That's not Unity rigid body doors or anything like that. It's not even animation. That's purely coded. And I just drag and drop a script on the doors. And it doesn't matter the rotation of this. If I rotate this in any way or whatnot, well, you got to make sure you select the entire thing. But no matter how I move this, the code will still work. The door will still open and close. Let me turn off the slow motion there with my mouse click. Will still work because those are working with transforms and information off. And if you were to check them, I'm sure that they would have, yeah, their forward is the forward example, and the scale is 111. So it's really cool. I like that. They're really professional doors. Kind of a lame way to say, but you can see that they work that way. I think the character doesn't have very good, I haven't programmed much of anything for like jumping or falling yet. I just did the character controller for turning and looking. I love making everything from scratch because you can make stuff so much better and bug-free. Okay, so I think that's about it that I can say. The benefits to knowing the programming perspective, and you can see here what I did with the Blender model and how I used negative scale and how I went ahead and basically mirrored my animation and getting all the setup that I needed to. So I've got the clip where I need to. I mean, you go and you check and you have, you don't have gaps. You don't have this weird stuff going on because you actually sat down and made it nice and straight in Blender, set all the positions and orientations up. If you have any questions or you'd like some help with anything, obviously this code in here would be nice to kind of give out, beg for it, I guess, because that's what I'm going to say if you really want it. It's something that took me, I don't know, 20 minutes to make because I hate Unity documentation and trying to figure out things. But it is what it is. So if you have any other questions or anything like that, if I can think of anything else, I'm going to attach to the video of this. But for now, thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.